Here we go. Welcome to Red Hoop Talk. I'm Roy Melendez from the Cataladeas Nation here in Southern California, home of the Shumash.
And I am Shannon O'Loughlin, citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, executive director and attorney for the Association on American Indian Affairs. And I'm coming to you from the homelands of the Piscataway peoples, what's now called Maryland. Welcome, everyone, to Red Hoop Talk.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you doing this week, Shannon?
Pretty good. That was I think the calmest intro that we have ever done.
And we were like in chaos, right? The second before. Do you know how cheesy that looks?
I know.
Do you have any idea of how cheesy that looks? That's like old 60s Batman shit. You know that, right?
Yes, I love it. Don't you love that stuff? You gotta love that stuff.
It's called you're being a noob.
Oh no, you sound like my son. Hi, Wolfgang. Wolfgang just said hi in the chat room.
Hey, Wolfgang. Your mom's being a noob, bro. Your mom is being a noob.
Careful, he's going to call you a boomer here shortly.
Yeah, he wouldn't say that because he was like, hey, he knows our lingo. He's one of us. No, welcome, welcome, Roy. Welcome to the land of Generation Z.
He's calling me a noob. Thanks a lot.
She is a noob. Oh, yeah. Serious poonage. Serious poonage. You'll know what that means, too.
Okay.
So how are you this week?
I'm okay. Grateful for a few days off and relaxing and eating way too much food. How's your sexy doing? Are you?
Well, that's why it just says Roy today, because I lost a couple of pounds of dangerous, and I am now just Roy, back to Roy, because I'm par. I didn't gain any weight, but I didn't lose any weight, so I'm not any more dangerous than I was last week. But this week I'm back on track. I didn't get a chance to eat my dinner. It's actually sitting right here on my desk because I've been trying to mess with my computer and everything. But I'm going to be like, this week is I have a big goal to lose some big weight, and then it's back in the gym this week.
What? You're going inside a gym?
No. I have a home gym set up here that I'm going to be doing my own home gym stuff.
So is that like an Indian gym, where you've got your dog?
Indian gym?
Yeah, Indian gym.
What's that supposed to look like?
Well, you got your milk cartons and you can.
Oh, you mean a res gym? You're talking about a res gym, like some coffee cans with some cement in them, and we can boom,
old school, old school. Old school working out.
Yeah, that's kind of basically what it is. So in my neighborhood, we have a park, and it has it has stations set up with so you can run the track, and then they have workout stations. So I'm going to do a walk jog that I've got up and downhill and up and back, up and downhill. So I'm going to do that. It's like a 5-mile thing, and then I'm going to go to the stations and do a round of the stations, and then come home, and then I have dumbbells and pull-up bars and push-up bars and all those kinds of things, and I'm going to get my workout going on this week. At least 3 days a week. My goal is 3 days a week.
Good for you. Good for you.
Back to danger.
We the association had a little video event earlier today.
Yes.
And every year on the 29th of November, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other people who are related to the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, they do a run every year. This year they didn't because of the coronavirus. But we got to here. Let me share. And it was interesting. We played a movie. Let me bring it up here so I don't butcher the name. We played a movie called Only the Earth and Mountains. It was a little 30-minute documentary done by Eleni.
Look at you all looking all cutesy and everything.
But it was a really powerful hour and a half or so. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. It's on Twitter. If you have some time, watch it. It has the 30-minute documentary about the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, and it intermixes history along with current people's stories and talking about historic trauma and healing from historic trauma. And we really had a great group of people on the panel. You all may remember Sheldon Spotted Elk. He's been on the show a few times. He's acted as our as a co-host a couple of times when you had family issues.
Yeah.
So hopefully you all can watch that. It's called Spiritual Healing from the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864. So yeah, so look for that. I'll put it in the chat box at some time. And hey, did you see we already have a question? Someone's asking us a question in the chat room.
I do. I want to say welcome to the chat room. And
chat room.
Well,
do you want to respond to what Kale asked?
Well, what are your thoughts on AIM? Well, I mean, as an organization, AIM is one of the grassroots Indian country organizations that has been out there fighting for social injustice and fighting for Native rights and fighting for land rights and you name it, going all the way back to the 60s. And it spawned and birthed a lot of our social leaders, I guess you can say. And it's had its own controversies, and they suffer those to this day. So my opinion or my feelings on AIM have always been there's some very good people in AIM. And just like in Indian country, there are some things that are going on that may not be to the best of the organization's name. So I don't have anything against AIM or for it. I agree with most of the issues that they tackle. And well, I guess maybe all the issues that they tackle. Maybe sometimes their tactics or the way they do things might be questionable, or some of the people that are involved might be questionable.
But that's every
organization you get into. So to endorse it or not endorse it is not my call or anything. So they've done some awesome work and they've done some good things for Indian country. So yeah, that's my opinion on AIM.
Definitely. And
I've got some good friends over there too.
Yeah, they're often the first people on the ground with things. And I always appreciated AIM because they were created on July 28th, 1968, which is my birthday. So my exact birthday. So
great organization, and they've done a lot of good work. So proud of them and all my brothers that are out there and sisters, in the marches and supporting Black Lives Matter and all those things that they've been doing. And traveling around. We actually had a member here on our show, and you can see that and go into our archives and see our show on AIM. So we did have that. Yeah, thanks for joining, Lance and JD, for always being here and being in our chat.
One more thing, and then we're going to get to our guest, if that's okay, Roy, unless you've got something on your mind that we need to talk about.
No, I'm good. I just had one of those, personal. I lost my water heater yesterday, so I was up all night putting in a new water heater.
What is up with everything in your house?
I have coyotes like running in and out of every freaking, you name it, in my house. It's like I got roots in my drains. My daughter comes in and says, I'm sitting there getting ready for dinner yesterday, and my daughter goes, "Dad, is there supposed to be water?" She goes out in the garage and comes back in because she's in the refrigerator or whatever. And she goes, "Is there supposed to be water coming out of the water heater?" I was like, oh. So I went out and sure thing. So the middle of the night, buying a new water heater, putting it in. until wee hours of the morning.
So,
but no, that
movie, where their house was built on an Indian burial ground. Do you maybe?
It's like
it's
like 2020. My whole life has been like that. It's just been one of those years that everything has just been.
You may want to do some cleaning up there. And then what the hell is that thing that's hanging from the sky in your no, move over.
I'm not gonna move over.
Can't you? What the hell is it doing there?
Hold on, I didn't even see it. That my head was blocking it until. Hold on one second.
So.
Oh no.
Roy is Shannon. Look, check it out. Roy, you look so nice. Yeah, Roy does. Roy gets around. He does other stream stuff too. And for some reason, something about pirates.
Oh my goodness! I didn't know that was stuff.
Alternate. Okay. Well, we're getting off topic here, but I'm seeing our numbers of people watching is going up. Woo! So,
oh boy. Anyway,
was there anything you wanted to share with us about that, Roy? Or
no, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't culturally appropriate. That's somebody else's culture.
I didn't even know that was there. I was like, wait a minute, what is that? Oh my gosh.
Okay, enough of pirates.
Yes, enough about pirates.
Can we? I want to remind everyone that our program is brought to you by the Association on American Indian Affairs. I also want to encourage all of you, if you haven't, to please go to our YouTube site and subscribe. We only have 249 subscribers, and we want you to be one of them. So please go and subscribe.
It doesn't cost you anything to do so.
Not a damn thing. And you'll see there that we have subscribed to some really great native YouTube channels. So check out who we subscribe to and give them some love as well. Can never have enough love in Indian country. There's some really good stuff. And we saw that last week. If you watched our program last week, Roy was totally smitten by some of our guests last week. So you got to watch that show.
We had a TikTok show.
Oh, there's Rachel. Hi, Rachel. I hope you're doing well there in Kentucky and those crazy places that you're trying to do some repatriation work at. I've gotten a chance to talk with Rachel about the work that she's trying to help with.
Yeah, wasn't she on a few shows ago asking questions and getting started? She was just getting started on that, right?
Yeah, has the chapter of AIM there in Kentucky, I think.
Nice.
Keep up the good work, Rachel. William, thanks for joining us. I know you were on our earlier broadcast this morning about the Sand Creek Massacre. So thank you for watching our Red Hoop Talk show. So what do you think, Roy? Let's get on to our guest.
Yes, definitely.
Guest time. It's guest. Okay. We need a song right here.
We need lots of songs, but unfortunately the audio quality on our platform is just not like good for putting on some really good music.
For you singing, we know it's not good enough for you to sing, unless there's an app that has.
Wait, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I mean, we hear the wolves howl when you start singing.
No, those are wolves. Those are just people in pain. Okay, I want to introduce you all to our guest, who I've known for a few years now. I'm not even going to go there. Victoria Sweet. She's Anishinaabe. She's the director of Indigenous Communities Grantmaking at the NoVo Foundation. She is an attorney, Roy.
An awesome attorney.
Awesome attorney. She's been involved in climate change work. She's been involved in advocacy for Native women and girls. She does some incredible work. She has an amazing heart. She recently moved from Nevada. She lives in New York State now, upstate New York.
Upstate New York.
Upstate, up from the state, New York, and the lands of the, I think she's in the lands of the Mohawk and north of the Shinnecock and stuff like that. So anyway, we'll let her tell us.
Without further ado.
Where she's calling from. Without further ado, are you going to push the button, Roy?
Yeah, I'll push the button.
Push the button, Roy.
Hi, Victoria.
Hello, everyone. Yes, Roy, another Sunday night, another attorney. Lucky you.
What, do you TikTok?
No, sorry. I'm so boring. You didn't even believe it. And hi, Shannon. Yes,
Hi.
we've been friends for a long time, haven't we?
We have, and you know why we're friends? Because your name is Victoria Sweet.
Yeah,
How
I'm sure
could
that.
you not want to know a woman named Victoria Sweet? That's
I
just
guarantee there's someone out there that would think different. But
if I had my own choice of name, I think I'd want to be named Victoria Sweet. It's just perfect. The perfect name.
thank you.
Beautiful. Anishinaabe. So
Yes.
So you are in New York. Do you know exactly where you are in New York as far as indigenous territory?
I've been told this is Lenape territory.
Okay.
And then I think there was some Haudenosaunee, in the area too. So I moved here September 3rd was the day I actually arrived, 2,700-mile car trip in the middle of a pandemic, because why not? So I'm still kind of getting used to everything, but it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous area.
Oh yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I miss being in New York. I lived in Albany and Syracuse and Salamanca and Olean and the Alleghenies. Wow. And so it's really a beautiful place to be. Roy, have you been to New York?
Yeah, I was up doing some school in Rochester for like probably 3 weeks. I think I was up there.
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah. Roy doesn't like the cold. I'm California through and through, and no cold.
Yeah, well, I'm born and raised northern Minnesota, so I'm hoping I'll still remember. I kind of reacclimate.
You got it in your bones.
Yeah.
But by the way, I did wear my law shirt that I have just to honor out you guys today.
Yeah.
Well, they gave it to me, so I mean, free shirts.
He's trying to make up for the comment.
Yeah. Those of you who heard him last week, he was down in attorneys.
I didn't down attorneys. I just said we're probably going to have another attorney on.
Yeah.
Yep. So why in the heck did you want to go to law school? And so did you grow up in Minnesota?
I did, yeah. So my mom is from the White Earth Reservation, and then my dad worked in the mining towns. So born and raised all my life. And the whole journey to even get to law school is such a weird story, and definitely didn't happen the way it happens for a lot of people. I'm a first-gen college student even. So when I was younger, I think I always thought about the idea of going to college, but I didn't even know what that meant or what it looked like. I went to a rural school. I think there was about 38 people I graduated with. We didn't have AP. And I think the only college prep I got was I was told, it's really hard. So if you don't get an A and if you get like a C, you should be happy. I didn't know anything about general ed. I didn't know anything about majors. It was like a very bizarre introduction into the higher ed world.
Yes. But you were successful enough in high school, right? That something encouraged you to go in that direction.
Yeah, it was that. And I think somebody planted in my head the idea that if you did well, you could get a scholarship. And that was my ticket to travel and to have some adventures and to see something new. Yeah. But yeah, so it was, and I did have the idea, I guess, in high school that being an attorney would be interesting. It's going to sound kind of like a cliche, but it was reading To Kill a Mockingbird and thinking, man, if you tried, even if you don't always succeed, you could actually do some good in the world. To me, it wasn't, you know, there are people who see things about lawyers and they think big money or prestige. It wasn't anything like that for me. It was really this idea that you could do some good. And I guess the foreshadowing of how I eventually got there was that there was a really tragic situation with a Native woman that she was a young woman that I was close to. She had been in my culture classes, and ended up with her in going to jail, and it had to do with abuse and an abusive husband, and, you know, a lot of the themes that we see, and me thinking, man, if I only knew something, if I only knew some way to help. And I was still in high school. I didn't really even know what that meant. But my journey eventually to get there took me a really long time. And I was actually 41 years old when I started law school.
Wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't like an instantaneous thing. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person who in Indian country who has no family or personal experience with what university life would be like, or how you navigate that world, or how you, I don't know, you even figure out how to fit into an environment that's so different from where you come from. So it took a bunch of false starts before I finally ended up that way.
Well, that's a big time frame that you're going to have to fill us in on. So so what, I mean, at 41 to making that decision, that, I mean, that's a big deal. Like I can't imagine making that kind of decision in my 40s, to because it's such a commitment to go to law school. Did you go there in Minnesota, or where did you go to law school at?
No, I went to Michigan State.
Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, again, I didn't even see that coming. I was living in Utah when I decided to go ahead and apply for law school. And then it was recommended that I apply for the Pre-Law Summer Institute in New Mexico, and ended up getting into that program. And then while I was there, I had, of course, superstar professors, and one of them was Professor Fletcher. So my professors were Matthew Fletcher, Angelique Eaglewoman, Rebecca Sosi, and Mimangwa Flying Earth. So anyone who knows the Indian law world knows they were phenomenal. And in the process of learning Indian law and developing this cohort of other people who were interested and came from different Native backgrounds, suddenly I started realizing that there were other options and other ways that I could go and study, and ways that maybe I could be more helpful. I just thought I'll go to law school. I didn't know about federal Indian law. I didn't know about all the big network and how we can support and strengthen one another throughout the community. And so through the process, I started learning about the different programs. And when I had the opportunity to go to Michigan State, it's Anishinaabe country, so I'm back, you know, close to home again, to study with Matthew and Winona Single and Kate Fort, who are all, you know, the backbones of that policy and law center. It just felt like this opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And the right place to go. Very good place to go to law
That was
school
excellent.
to get the support. So what? So go back a little further, Victoria. I want to know how you know how your life story took you to law school at 41. Like, you know, when did you finish? Because you have to get an undergraduate first, right? You have to go to high school. You have to get that piece of paper. Then you got to go 4 years of school and get that piece of paper before you can go to law school. So what was that journey like?
Well, I started at a university, and what I found, my initial beginnings, was that I really was not equipped for what I was facing. The university was larger than the two largest small towns close to the little rural community I grew up in put together. And I discovered that I didn't have a really good solid sense of identity. I didn't have a solid sense of where I fit. I would talk to people and they would talk about their families, their grandpa who's a lawyer, or or a doctor, or their family trip here or there, all these experiences that I had, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I felt so out of place. And that was me, right? That's my own complicated sense of self. But I literally did have someone say to me at one time, there was a miscommunication between us, and they said, well, what do we expect from someone who comes from your background? So sharing, a little bit about a background like mine that wasn't traditional in any way, I didn't fit. I realized I just didn't fit. And when I reached out, trying to get to know the Native community, as we all know, there's a lot of issues with identity within our own community too. How you appear can make a difference. So I didn't know how to navigate any of that. I was so completely unprepared. So what I did is I got married, because that's what you do. That solves every problem, right? Um, so I got married. I got married to someone I met in one of my classes. We were both super young. And then I ended up pregnant with my first child, and I was very, very ill, and I had to drop out of school for a while. And then I started going back to school and navigating that. And then he took a job in another state, and I had six credits left to finish my undergrad. And he said, we need to do this for the good of our family. So I left school, and I didn't finish immediately. And I had my second child, and I had started a little business on my own. And then we did have some really cool opportunities. We ended up living in Europe for a while. His company sent us to Poland. We lived in Poland for a year and a half. My third child was born while I lived in Poland. We lived in Germany. So I was having unbelievable life experiences. The schooling part got kind of set to the side for a time, and I was raising children and exploring the world and seeing new cultures and new perspectives. So I would say that I had some really incredible opportunities. But when we came back to the States, everything inside of me was itching to get back to learning. I mean, I remember when I got that very first university catalog and I saw all these courses that you can study. I mean, I didn't even know where to start. It was like the most exciting moment of my life. I'm the biggest book nerd. I mean, when you guys, when I think I said this to you at one point, we should have just taken down the bio and just said she's a book nerd who grew up in the woods in Minnesota. I mean, that was me, and the chance to learn felt like breathing. It was just so exciting and inspiring to have opportunities to learn things. So I found my way back to taking some courses. Transferred into a new college that was willing to work with my somewhat outdated, the work I had done before that. And I ended up finishing an undergrad and then did my master's degree in education. And I wrote a master's thesis on Indigenous forms of education because I was really feeling that draw back to community and back to culture again. So I thought that was what I was going to do. I thought that that idea of being an attorney was that kid thing that was like, well, too late. I really didn't think that that was something that could happen again. And I focused on education. I ended up becoming a high school teacher. I really loved it. But in the middle of all of that, I also became a single parent. And anyone who's a teacher will tell you they do not pay teachers enough. And I was trying to figure out how to navigate the world as a single mom with 3 children. And even with a master's degree in education, I could barely afford to live and to provide for my children. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and this thought was just going through my head. It's time to go to law school. And I kept trying to push it away. I thought, that is the most ridiculous thing you have ever thought. Like, I don't even know where this is coming from, but I couldn't go back to sleep until finally I made a commitment to myself to look into it. And the next day I started filling out applications to go to law school.
Oh my gosh. Was there something that that you remember from growing up that kind of kept you connected to your culture, to who you are, to your relations, and your kin? I mean, because you ended up going on this journey to foreign land and got all this different experience, and then to wind up kind of not back where you started, but back where you started with this new family on your own, able to make those decisions again for yourself. So do you think it was something that kind of crept back in, that was connected to your relations with culture, with something. How did that? Because it sounds like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it sounds like where you ended up going and what you were doing seemed to take you away from your connection to culture.
It did, but it's always been the foundation, I think, of who I am. I was raised very much aware of, you are, we used to say Chippewa, then we say Ojibwe. I've been trying to reclaim Anishinaabe because I think that's really powerful, the way we name ourselves. But I always knew, I mean, it was just a part of who we were. And my grandpa was born in 1906, and he was physically, forcibly removed and thrown into a really very complicated, I don't want to say complicated, I keep using that word, really traumatic boarding school experience. He was taken to Flandreau in South Dakota. And my grandpa did not talk about the boarding school. He was one of those that if you tried to get him to talk about it, he would get quiet and he would leave the room. It was not something he talked about. We knew most of his stories from his brother, who also went and who shared some of the stories. But there was just something about Grandpa that he was always like this pillar of strength and love that you knew was there, even though he didn't show emotion. He didn't show, you know what I mean? And as we learned his story, something about my grandpa has always really inspired me. Grandpa was the kind of guy who, he wanted to watch boxing, and if we got in his way, he'd yell, get out of the way, you little assholes. You're blocking my view of boxing. But you also knew that Grandpa would have driven through snow and blizzards to take care of you if you were stranded somewhere and you needed somebody. And actually, that's why I have the last name Sweet. When I was in law school, I decided I didn't want to keep the ex-husband's last name any longer. And I talked to the kids. They all felt okay about it. And instead of going back to my maiden name, I decided to take my grandpa's last name in honor of him. So Grandpa was just this like very important person in my life and all of the grandchildren's lives. And knowing him, and just, I didn't necessarily think he did things that were specifically Native, but he did. He was a real Native grandpa. And I think my love for him and for the things that we learned in culture class, and I think it always came back to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's powerful. And I think that's a lot of us that we've talked to on the show, there's always this grandparent or an auntie or someone in the community who kind of has a special draw for us.
Yeah.
That's helped give us the strength and courage to take some chances and risks so that we could, bring things back home.
Yeah.
Sounds like your grandpa was was the big one.
Yeah, and his mom. I learned a little bit about her. Never had a chance to meet her in this lifetime, but she was also a single mom. She had a bunch of children, and she was dealing with having children forcibly removed and sent to boarding schools. And then her husband actually abandoned her and left her alone. And she was alone for a number of years before she eventually found a new partner. But I heard these stories about her and the strength and the love. One story that always stood out to me was the story about how she would grow this big garden to help feed her children. And there was a man in the community who he was drinking a lot and he was not in a good place, and he kept taking things from her garden. And when my grandpa was young, he was really upset about it. And he said, well, someone's stealing from your garden. And my great grandma's response to him had been, well, if he needs it badly enough to steal it from me, he must really need it. And she didn't get angry. She really had this sense of, if he's going to take from me, he must be desperate. And this sort of, again, this quiet strength. So her story and the influence I think she had on Grandpa, and the influence that then had on all of us. If you got all my cousins together, we could go on for days. And we love Grandma too. And it's not that we don't, but there was something about Grandpa that brought us stability. And he wasn't, I don't know that you would say he was stable on paper. I found out he rode the rails. He left boarding school at 14, and he tried to get jobs and he couldn't get jobs. So he jumped on a train, an express train, and he rode the rails for years.
Wow.
And the way I found out about that was that one day I just said to him, Grandpa, have you ever left Minnesota? Because I never saw him travel anywhere. And he was reading a newspaper and he paused and he said, baby, I've been in jails all over this country. And then he just put the paper back up again. He started laughing, and my mom's, don't tell her that, but eventually it got to the story, and he did. He rode the rails and he boxed and he fought and he drank. And he had a lot of tragedy and a lot of rough stuff in his life, but there was something about him that every one of us could hold on to.
Mm.
Wow.
It's a lot like my grandfather. He was a boxer too.
Oh yeah.
Until they stole his license and he couldn't fight anymore. They didn't. My grandmother didn't want him to fight anymore, so his mother and my grandmother stole his license. So
man.
He was Golden Gloves, and he was also bare fister back. He was also born in 1901. I think he was born. So way back then. Rode a horse to school, that kind of stuff.
Those are some different times.
Yeah.
And it's even different times us, that attitude about, well, they must need it more than we do. I don't see that very much in the world that we live in. I still see it back home. I see it when I get to travel around Indian country.
Yeah.
But it's not something that our world seems to find value in. That
that's the gifting that's deep ingrained in our culture. I mean, when you have ceremony, you give. It's always about giving, and I mean that's where our little holiday that just passed really, pop culture celebrates it once a year, but it was Indian country's everyday life that they derived it from, where they celebrate it one day. We've always celebrated it every day. You come into the arena, the first thing you do is you think about who and how am I going to get, my giving to everyone, that I can.
Yep.
And that's just part of our culture and who we are. And, probably where some of those slang terms come from too. But I'm sure that one was obviously flipped on its head. Like all the other things that have been flipped on their heads to point fingers at Indian country versus, the people, the oppressors. So anyway, but my grandmother too was that inspiration. I love hearing those stories. And the coolest part about our show is that we do get to hear these stories from you guys and reflect on our own. And I just recently lost that matriarch. She just passed away a few weeks ago. And but my grandmother was a lot like your grandfather. She wasn't. She came from. We didn't have a reservation. We just had a community that was left because the Caddos went to Oklahoma, and our part of the community stayed in Louisiana, but remained a community. Had our dances and powwows, and they were part of the same mission church down there. They all went to that church. But when she moved out here to California, she still had all of those cultural qualities, but no real cultural connection, especially out here in California, because the Indian culture and community really didn't kind of like rise up until like the 60s out here in California, where we started having powwows and those kinds of things.
Sure.
She was never part of it out here. But it was so she became a member of a Christian church, and that was her thing. And but when she passed away just recently, so I had ceremony myself because my grandfather, of course, was, the church was doing the ceremony and everything, And then I went to the gravesite, and so we get to the grave. I just wanted to tell. I haven't told the story yet, but we go to the gravesite, and because of COVID, there was it was my family, my wife, my kids, and a niece and her husband, and my grandfather, who's 92. So we get there, and of course the funeral director goes, "Okay, so I just wanted to make sure afterwards, do you guys want to stay for the interment, or and I was like, oh no, and my grandfather's like, well, if I paid for it, we're staying, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is where they like put her in the ground
Yeah.
and they throw the dirt, the dirt. So no, he was like adamant. Nope, I paid for it. I'm staying, you know? And I'm like, oh boy. So we had the whole ceremony and we were waiting. We're waiting for the grounds crew to get there, right? I've never experienced anything like this ever. Tractors come rolling over to the gravesite and a bunch of guys, you know, on carts come rolling in with shovels and everything. And literally they set this backhoe up and started, you know, lowered grandma down in the ground and pulled the dirt over and pounded it down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're sitting here watching this. You know, my grandfather's sitting there, you know. Yeah. And then the thing was, so they get everything done and it's like, okay, it's time to leave. Well, we all start to walk and my grandfather walks over to the gravesite. So everybody follows him over and he started praying and it was finally just a moment of silence. That was like at that moment, everybody just got real serious and right after he got done and we were all getting ready to finish up, there was a big tree sitting next to the site. And we hear this hawk scream in the tree right next to us. And we all look up and my daughter grabs me and looks up and says, Dad. I say, I hear it. And this hawk screaming. And then all of a sudden it jumps out of the tree and flies off. Wow. And I was like, yep, that was how it was supposed to be. And it was an odd, incredible experience. And then, but it brought it all home for me and showed me who she was, because she was always showing me who she was, you know. Wow. And she's the one who sent me back home to Louisiana when it was time. It was like, no, you got to go back home because those people need you need to be reintroduced to your culture, because this has been detrimental to you out here. You know, I was living in Los Angeles. I grew up in Inglewood, California, you know, so it was like gangs and everything else. So she finally sent me back home to reconnect with my culture. So that was my story, how it happened for me. And then after that, you know, I was on the red road, we say, you know, from that point on, and the mentors came into my life and then she always encouraged it. And even though she had her own beliefs, she knew that I was in the right place. She knew I was in the right hands, and that's where I needed to be. So it was, I don't think I've ever told that story here. Have I, Shannon?
No, you haven't. I'm glad you did.
So that was my little story, how we culture connection.
Yeah. Those are the things you know, and unless you're paying attention, unless you're connected at some level, you miss those kind of things, you know, the coincidences,
right.
Or whatever.
Like when we started the show, right, Shannon?
Right. Like,
well, I told you the story, right, when we started the show about the crows. The crows were screaming. I was out in the backyard and the crows were screaming, and I was like, yeah, because our mentors was Little Crow. So when the crows start screaming at me, I know that, hey, something's going on. You need to pay attention, dummy. Because that's what he would always say, pay attention, dummy. He never said that to Shannon for some reason. But anyway, I said, I got to call my sister. And that's when I called her. And she said, well, it's a funny thing that you're calling, because I'm coming to California and I want you to come with me on the stream. She did the Joe Rogan show. Right. And so I was like, yeah, I'll come. And that started this whole thing. And it was because of the crows screaming. And I was paying attention. And I said, no, I got to call my sister because crow's telling me, freaking shut up and listen, dummy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here we are now.
Here we are.
And I love that it feels so normal to talk about this because this is true. This is how it works.
That's how it works. It's always how it works.
Yep.
And to pay attention to that. And what I was always taught was, you know, to be silent if you're silent. And like you say, that silent strength, to be silent, and the world is the universe is obligated to answer you. And that's when all the answers come, is when you listen instead of talk. Yeah. Hence red hoop talk, right?
Well, I'm a talker. Maybe I should stop.
No, please don't. We gotta stop Roy from talking. He's gonna start
No.
TikTok.
I promise I won't stop talking until the interview's done. Then
So you
beautiful.
so somehow you ended up finishing your undergrad degree.
Yeah.
And how long was it from there to get into law school? Was it one of those things that just
It was
quickly, or it was
God,
slow?
I'd have to think. It about 4 or 5 years. 5 years. I mean, I feel like all this education stuff, it all kind of happened in a chunk. You know, I got it started and then went off and lived and had some lived experiences.
Yeah.
And then when it was time, things just started happening. I mean, I think I told you too, you know, the bio that I gave you that I use for work, most of everything that's in there is in the past 7 or 8 years. You know, it's just when the door decides to open, it's amazing how it just bursts open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just clumsily stumble my way through. I don't have a clue. I didn't have a strategy. I didn't know what I was doing. I just got real lucky.
You're the most organized. You mean you're not one of those people who have, like, you know, the question that they ask, so what are you going to do 10 years from now? Where are you going to be? Isn't that what they ask us in law school? Like, where do you see?
I just gave up. I leave it in the hands of the ancestors. I don't know. You all tell me. You seem to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, let me answer the chat room real quick. I just want to say welcome to William and Carrie Elizabeth and Rachel Allen. I can't pronounce it. Chrysaline. Chrysaline, is that what it is?
Yes.
Welcome to the chat room, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Not that we're ignoring you; we're just talking with our guest. But please feel free to ask questions and participate. But I want to welcome all of you. Thanks for coming in and joining us and sharing who you are and where you're from. Appreciate you all. So feel free to ask questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead, guys. I just wanted to acknowledge everybody that's in there posting.
Thanks.
I was just laughing about trying to make plans.
Yeah.
I just given up on that.
Me too. I'm just like, okay, what do I got to fix today? What's happening today? Oh my goodness!
When I look at your career timeline or whatever we want to call it, you know, it's kind of similar to mine. Or things just kind of happen; they just pop up and lead you down a pathway. That's what it looks like to me when I look at your timeline. It's kind of similar to mine.
I got out of my own way, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's I don't think I ever, because I thought I was living in Utah. I was going to go to school in Utah. And then all of a sudden this other opportunity popped up and it was exactly perfect. And every summer, what am I going to do for my summer internship? And all of a sudden it would just show up and it was exactly perfect. And I would never have projected the trajectory of the steps that I've taken, but every one of them makes sense. And when I look back, I can see how all of them worked together to build something to get me to where I am. So clearly I was never in control. I just had to be open and listening, like the crows, exactly like the crows.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So when I've you got to interrupt me too, Roy, because I get talking to Victoria and forget that you're here.
You always forget I'm here. What are you talking about? Until I flap my gums. This just so that you know, they reformatted our stream screen. So I'm like, it's like in our face now. Have you noticed that?
No.
You haven't noticed it's reformatted? No. My gosh, it's like, it's bigger than life right now on my screen anyway.
Did you change your glasses there, Roy? Maybe you cleaned off your glasses a little bit and you can see a little better.
No.
Let's ask some more questions, Roy. You got a question?
Well, so tell us. So you go to law school.
Yes.
And I want to be lawyer, change the world, not make money. I want to be a good lawyer.
Like break my heart wide open.
Pro bono.
Who needs money? Yeah.
Who needs money?
Free
the world. save, but what brought your work into Indian country?
Well, so I went through Michigan State's. They have an Indigenous Law and Policy Center. So all the way through, I was taking courses on federal Indian law and international Indigenous human rights law, and just all sorts of things that always tied in. We had conferences every year where they would bring in attorneys. I was still connected to my PLSI friends and people like Sam Deloria and people like that who helped run all of that. So it was always at the top of my mind. And I just that's what I knew my trajectory was going to be. My first summer I worked at White Earth at the legal department there. The second year I was at the Indian Law Resource Center in Montana. So every single thing that I was doing and that I was about had to do with Indian law. And I always knew that I was very much focused on issues related to women and violence issues. Going back to my youth, when I saw those experiences happening and thinking, I wish I could do something, I wish I knew something. Before I even went to law school, I had started learning about human trafficking. It was in 2009. Nobody even knew what that was when you would say that to people. And so when I went into law school, I did also have this frame of there's a lot of violence issues, and there's this crime called human trafficking that no one's talking about, and it's not a new crime, it's just newly defined, and there's a new awareness that's being raised. And then people like Sarah Deer came and talked, and I really got to learn from her and pick her brain and some of these really brilliant minds. And then I kind of clumsily stumbled into a really incredible opportunity. I was on a law review, international law review editorial board, and it was my job to put on our symposium. And our advisor, we were talking about the Arctic, and we were talking about things that were happening in the Arctic and the possibility of researching the Arctic and bringing some Arctic speakers in. And somehow that ended up with me getting an invitation to go to a polar law conference in Rovaniemi, Finland. And so I fly to Finland, and I'm there, and they're talking about climate shifts and how that's impacting the Arctic. They're talking about shipping. They're talking about all these companies that want to get access to the mineral deposits and all the things that had been under the ice. And in the middle of it, I just said to somebody, what about the indigenous communities that are living all over this circumpolar Arctic regions? And in particular, the women there and the girls. You're talking about bringing in outsiders, you're talking about all these things. And from the frame that I understood the world, we need to be talking about risks. Nobody was talking about it. They all kind of just looked at me strangely. So I ended up going back to Michigan, and I began my research on what does this look like. If climate change is happening, the ice is melting, everybody's talking about wanting to get in and extract. We're back to the whole colonial patterns that we've always had.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's talking about the people who are living in those regions, which overwhelmingly, I'm having word troubles tonight, overwhelmingly are indigenous communities. There's a lot of indigenous people living in the circumpolar Arctic, and you're bringing in outside workers. You're talking about bringing in all these people. Those are risk factors for, at a minimum, trafficking. And as years have gone by, we've started to realize additional things. So that kind of took me in this whole path of I got to go back to Finland, I got to go to Iceland and Canada, around the US, and just speaking and writing about these links and trying to get people to talk about it. Not that I thought I had every answer in the world, but if we didn't at least address it, then we're going to have problems. And wouldn't it be a breath of fresh air if we could get people to try to put some things in place before there's a problem and not try to have to go back afterwards and repair. Mm-hmm. And so that took me down this very unexpected road, but it has definitely impacted me all the way through. And just in January 2020, finally got published. I actually got to co-author a chapter that came out in a book with a Sami woman professor in Finland, in the Finland part of Sami. And we spoke about human security in general from an indigenous perspective. And it's freedom from these violence, but it's also the food security issues, and it's also housing security, and it's also all these things. So it's really gotten deeper, but we have to, if we see the red flags, if we see the things out there and nobody's talking about it at that time, I really feel like it's a responsibility to start raising some awareness and at least invite the conversation.
Well, this is interesting. The two subjects, they're both important. They're both very different,
Yep.
but connected, of course, as
Yeah.
always. It's very interesting that we see the new administration bringing in a matriarchal cabinet,
Yeah.
which is extremely cool. I just saw that over the last few days, how that's occurring. And we even talked about it last week on the show about, the grandmas and the aunties and how those people are actually, they were always the power in our family, in a lot of families, I see that as the power. But I also see that within our own communities, there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of horrible things that are happening to women on all kinds of different levels. So at one hand, I know that our Indian country is a matriarchal, I have a hard time with that word, society in general. And, even in our micro families, I mean, we can all sit here and go, yeah, grandma wears the pants and aunties wear the pants and mom wore the pants. And that's kind of like how we always, that's the direction we went in, and even our elder, when Shannon and I were learning lessons about, life and what our society was built like. And, some of the ceremonies, most of the ceremonies are built for men, and it's not that it's a patriarchal thing. What he always told me was the reason men have to have so many ceremonies is because we don't know. Women know. We have to be reminded all the time because we're the idiots. And the women are the ones that already know all of these things. They don't have to be reminded constantly. It's us dummies who have to be reminded constantly. So I've always remembered that about my lessons and how I've been taught. But then I've also looked at, our historical issues, which is the abuse of women, and always wondered why that was part of it, or why that was such a big part of one of the problems within our communities was this abuse towards women or this disrespect towards women, when in all actuality, all of our families were loaded with powerful women. Yeah. And, but these things were going on, and women were turning up missing, and women were being beaten, and women were being raped, and women were being abused and left and abandoned and all these other things. So it's always been like a conundrum for me that was, running rampant within Indian country. And then I take a step back, and then I go, well, are these crimes, are these offenses towards women, of what's the nature of them? What is it? And when I look at it from a micro perspective at different incidences that I've known of, or I've seen, or that I've heard of, it always comes down to the sexual relationship, not necessarily a physical act of sex, but the relationship of man and woman, and there being those issues or whatever that get heightened by all the other things, alcoholism and money problems and all those other things. And then this abuse kind of like slips into it somehow. We forget, and then the woman gets the worst part of that. I don't know. I've always tried to figure it out and understand it myself. I mean, I've never been an abuser or one to even look at life in that way. Always had great respect for women because of my grandmother and how she ran her family. Because I always treated the women in my life that way, that they were, hey, you deserve the same respect as every other woman in our family does. And so I've always tried to put it together and find out what was the rampant problem, what was the underlying issue that made this such an epidemic in Indian country.
God.
What do you
Did you have a point, Shan? Because I think you're asking a question that everyone.
It was kind of a question, kind of a point, kind of
Yeah.
I'm maybe as confused as everybody else about the issue, because I know there's so many advocates out there, that are helping in the situation, but I always see the aftermath and let's help this woman who's already been abused, or let's help get her a place where she can, but let's step back and maybe find out what's the underlying problem here. Why is this what's going on? Is it just alcohol? Is it just bad relationships? Is it the res situation? Is it the poverty situation? Is it
why do we
not educating our men situation? I mean, I was lucky that I was raised by, my grandmother raised me. My mom was 15 when I was born, so she raised me. So she was my authority figure. And so I always had the respect for that. So maybe I just was brought up differently. And then, maybe it's the substance abuse problems. I don't know. I'm just trying to take a step back and say, how can we stop these things from happening? I was lucky. I was taught, by an elder afterwards also that, hey, here's the reason why society is, how come we do the things we do? Because the women already, they have the answers. It's us men that need to understand them, so I don't know if everybody's just not taught that, and then they weren't raised like me, but I wonder where it comes from and how can we get back and start educating so that we're not having to do the cleanup and we can kind of nip it in the bud before it all starts to happen.
I mean, I think that's what people are trying to do. And I think it's also tricky when we try to narrow it down to a cause. From my perspective, it's so many things compounded together. And there are amazing people out there right now who are doing this thing. There are men starting to work with young men and older men and saying from a man, let's work as men to try to get to the root of this. And we have, people putting out campaigns for our youth and saying that this isn't culture and this, so there are people trying to get to the heart of it. And so I'm going to go on what's going to sound like a tangent, but I swear it has a point because
Go ahead.
because I really do. So I think this is an example I've been sitting with for the past little bit. That's going to go back to sort of the schooling thing and mentors and I think you'll understand. So when I was at Michigan State Law, I mentioned that one of my professors, Matthew Fletcher, he's very well known in the Indian law community, very prolific, very intelligent person that's so respected in the community. My first job out of law school was actually at the Policy Center working as the fellow. So I worked there for a year. And I remember shortly after I started working there that someone came in and I introduced him and said, "This is my boss." And after they left, he said, "Don't ever call me your boss." He's like, "You're my colleague. You're a professional and I'm a professional. And we're here working together." And, that didn't change the fact that he supervised me, but there was a lesson in that. If you want to talk about indigenizing a space, that was a perfect example of it. It was being an Anishinaabe. It was being the person who says, "I see you as a human, as a fellow human. And I don't care what the Western hierarchical world does and how it has, I'm up here and you're down there, and here's our job names and titles." And he was living the very thing that we try to teach, which is about we're not going to subscribe to that other perspective of how we treat people. And that comes through in our language, right? My language, when you have a verb-based language and you start learning it and you start looking at the world and you're seeing it as, what is that thing? How is it in this world? Not just it's big, it's black, you know what I mean? And putting it in these noun verb categories or noun categories of these Western languages, these colonial languages that got taught to us. There's so much beauty in going back and actually getting to the heart of how we treated one another that we lost when our languages were being taken away from us and our family structures were being taken away from us and our mentorship examples were being taken away from us and the sicknesses were added in and the starting to lose our relationship to our mother, the earth, and the way that it happened. And to me, I've been sitting with this a lot, just even this past month. Am I being that in every interaction, whether I'm talking about with my grandchildren now, because I now have 2 grandchildren, where I'm talking about someone I supervise at work, whether I'm talking about someone that comes up to me in this world, am I moving away from this perspective that was put on top of us, which was there is a hierarchy and the person is up here and you're down here, and we talk this way to one another depending on degrees and job titles and whatever other made up thing that we have. And what could be healed if we learn to actually embody what it means to be that and to move our way in the world that way. That got run over, that got overwritten by these other patterns, and we're very human. And many of us, some people fell into it because they wanted the power, and some people fell into it because they were ill and because they were in trauma. But how I would love to see a re-indigenization going to the core and going to that kind of stuff. And if we could get there somehow, and I think our ceremonies are a part of it, and I think these conversations are a part of it, but as we get there, then you're not hurting someone else, even with your language, let alone with physical violence, because you're not seeing them as someone who's down here and you're there and you're trying to gain power or some way, or you're trying to take out your traumas on them. So that doesn't answer it, because I don't know, but I think it's something that I've been sitting with that's really resonating for me. And I think that's why we're starting to turn to the stories of our grandmas and our grandpas and trying to reclaim our land because she's our mother, and trying to reclaim our languages because of those things that are in them. And I think that really is going to be more helpful to us down the line than all the analysis that can be done out there of the specific incidences and what they were.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, because I think what you said was important, and that's that these issues, this thought, this going back to the core is what's resonating with everyone, and it's even resonating out into like our country's government right now.
Yep.
We're seeing it start to resonate. For instance, the 2 things that you just talked about are the exact things that are on the front of the agenda of this new administration coming in, which is, climate and women coming into power and taking their seats and, helping to lead this country. So I think that message is starting to resonate with everyone, especially everyone here on this land, because of the diligence of Indian country and the prayers and the thoughts and the things that we do and the things that we've done, because everybody here on this land is an indigenous land, and it's all indigenous land.
That's right.
And those people are feeling the power of our prayers and our dances and our ceremonies and all of those things, and it's starting to resonate into them. All the things that they wanted to steal from us resonated with them first.
That's right.
The governmental systems, the way we did things. This country was built. I mean, you could read 100 books about how Indian country really influenced America and its government systems and all of that.
Yep.
So they took the things they wanted at first and they stripped them away, and they used them, abused them, and then tucked the people away.
That's
and
right.
hid them. And we didn't go away, of course, because we are the caretakers of this land, and we've been here. And we're going to continue to care for it and take care of it, even if we have to do it in the shadows in the closets. And that's what's been going on for all of these millennia. But here we are today. Our voices are now being heard more. The core is starting to resonate now versus just the outside things that they wanted to take. So I think that as time goes on, like you said, that core belief in us as Indigenous people is going to start to slip into mainstream society more and more and more. And that's always my hopes and my vision. It always has been. And now but I'm starting to see it, and I'm starting to hear people like yourself talk and say that is actually resonating. And it is. And so here we are today at the beginning stages of that. So interesting.
Well, and I have to say, there's law and there's all these other things that I can do, but if the best thing I could do is someday somebody has a story about how it changed their perspective on how they treat other people because of something that I did. If I can hold a door for someone else to walk through, if if we all can start doing that, I think we're going to see greater healing. We didn't have a lot of examples of people opening the doors for each other. We were constantly being pit against each other. And when you go out and you're trying to be in a field like law, or a field like any kind of law that any other kind of really competitive thing that's out there, that is not built into that system.
No.
We have to change how we treat one another and how we interact with each other in order to make those changes so that we really can take this education that we learn and figure out how to bridge it in an Indigenous way so that we are helping heal and not just adding to the problem.
Yeah. No, one of our elder also, one of the core teachings, very, very simple teachings that we were taught, which is the core belief, which is everything is sacred, everything is connected, everything is related, and you make a difference. So you talk about how you affect someone else and how maybe change their attitude. Every person here, every person who has that belief, every Indigenous person who has those strong beliefs, that resonation of the core beliefs, can make a difference by going out there and acting, reacting, and treating others, in that with that in mind. So, yeah, it's happening, and we're making a difference. People are making a difference, and like this show, these things were tucked away within Shannon and myself for all these years. I mean, she was out there. Don't get me wrong. She's been out there working her ass off in law and legal and doing things for Indian country. But we weren't. And I mean, we're not young anymore. We used to be very young and didn't think that we were just shouting at the rooftops and banging our heads up against walls when we were younger. We felt. But now here we are. We're more mature. We've been through the ringer in life, and now we're the elders. I hate to say that, but we're the elders, and we're disseminating the information, and we have a platform to do so. So it's really come full circle. It's cool. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, like Victoria, now with your role has changed from legal counsel and the work you were doing with that legal base now to you're working with a foundation and giving funding and helping to develop programs that can make a difference. So tell us about times that you're overwhelmed. So it's one thing to remember, right? So we're talking about remembering, about taking a breath, remembering that we're all sacred, we're all connected, we're all related, and we're all in this together, right? But it doesn't feel that way all the time.
No.
And so tell us about being overwhelmed with the things that you've done either now or in the past, and it's just been a lot.
Well, so you're talking work right now? Because I will say that when COVID hit, everything exploded. Like the world stopped, but the needs went unbelievable. I mean, so I'm going to try not to get all emotional here, but right in the beginnings when everything started hitting and things started getting shut down, there were calls coming in. And of course, when you represent funding, everyone was freaking out. Everyone was terrified. What is going to happen? We have to shut down. I can't pay my staff. I can't do this. We can't run this program. And everyone was scared. And I was on call after call after call with people, and people were just breaking down in tears. It was so heartbreaking to hear somebody who's been working so hard to build up, maybe a small nonprofit or something in Indian country, because I work specifically on Indigenous communities work. And just hearing their voices break as they're talking about having to lay off their staff, and nobody knows what they're going to be able to do, and they don't know if they're even going to be able to make it through this. And watching their dreams and their fears for their communities and their families happening. And the problem is, there are resources, but every resource has limits. There's not unlimited. And you just there's the need always outweighs the ability to do. And I think it's, putting myself back into that place of how I felt when I tried to go to a university and I had no frame of reference. I see that a lot of times when we're talking to people and we're talking about getting into funding opportunities. So few of our community members have access or even know how to go about getting access. And so constantly in this place of how do we expand, how do we grow, how do we provide opportunities for more? My firm belief is that we in Indian country, we know somewhere inside of ourselves, may not be each one of us individually, but we have in our collective wisdom answers on how to heal ourselves. We do not need someone to come in and tell us how to do it. We simply need the barriers to be removed so we have the access to the things that make it possible for us to fulfill the visions and the ideas and the things that we know that we need and that we really believe we could do if we just had that opportunity. And so I would say specifically in this role, I think that's a lot of where my overwhelm comes from, is how do we shift structures and open things up and make it possible for more people who have that vision to have the barriers that are created by living in a society that is so extractive in its own nature. And so it's not designed for us to succeed as natives. It was never designed for us to succeed. So how do we navigate it, and how do we, it's not just one or two groups, but there's so many people out there. And how do we figure out how to open it up for them? And so I think I sit with that. I sit with that a lot. And then trying to balance that with my own humanness, with, one of my children got COVID, and then his wife and their child. And I lost 3 people to COVID. And I don't know anybody in Indian country who hasn't been touched in some way. It has hit our communities. And, so my own fears, my own worries, my own concerns about my family and my community, and still trying to show up as a professional, and still trying to have the emotional and spiritual energy and physical energy to do it all. So I don't, I don't want to be this downer here, but it's really hard. I think overwhelm has just been sort of the overarching theme of the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It
absolutely.
definitely
Being real.
has.
And I
Definitely
really
has.
appreciate you sharing that, Victoria, because I think a lot of us feel, and you're telling me that you're living alone
Yeah.
now. You moved somewhere and you're living by yourself. And
Yeah.
even those people out there who are living with their families are finding themselves at this time feeling so alone and lonely, and not feeling connected to anything. So oftentimes it just feels like this is just me. This is
Yeah.
just me feeling this way. And to know that in Indian country, well, I guess you don't have to look too far to know that we're all in this together, and we're not alone.
Yeah.
And there are places we can reach out, whether it's our show, whether it's a foundation like yours. There's so many things that are coming up out of the woodworks that are trying to pull people back into community. And I'm so grateful for all of those people, all of those organizations who are doing it. Everyone's doing it a little differently here, differently there, to connect to different people. And man, I hope people know that we're all here for each other, and
Yeah.
we've got a lot to be grateful for right now.
Yeah. I hoped that people, even if all they got from a phone call with me was just that somebody heard them,
Yeah.
I mean, really, if that's all somebody needed. And I mean, so I always turn to humor because that's just how I survive life. So when I was still at my house in Reno, I was building gardens. That was the thing I could do. I lived alone. I didn't have any pets. My kids are all grown up and moved out and being adults, and so I started gardening, and I was talking to the plants. I didn't have anybody else. There was a lizard running around. Lizard and I would have conversations. I'm chatting up. The neighbors are peeking over the fence at the crazy woman who's talking alone in her yard. And I was telling people these stories on calls, and we were all laughing at how ridiculous. And we were all laughing because we all get it. And even some people in a house full of people felt alone
Mhm.
because they were sitting in their own place of whatever anxiety or fear or concern that they had. And not everybody even connected to you has the same ones. So sometimes you just need somebody to hear you out and say, well, yeah, I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But my plants grew great. So I'm
Yeah,
sure
didn't
it's
they
the
say if you talk to
stimulating
them,
conversation. Yeah.
you could talk to them, they grow better, something like that.
It's true. They took off. I had tomatoes for days.
Mm.
Hey, I wanted to jump back in the chat room again real
Yeah.
quick. Sammy Joe Diffentorum said, I'd like the incoming administration to take a solemn look at the federal acknowledgement process. It's expensive, incredibly difficult to navigate the process without any grant funding. It's daunting, even with funds and volunteers. OMB estimates the cost to prepare a petition at $22 million. Very familiar with the situation because our tribe, our clan, I guess you would call it, the Adeas Caddos, we've been under, trying to, they've got state recognition, but they've been trying to be federally recognized for some 30 plus years now. So it is a big problem. It may be an issue that gets raised up again because I hear that being talked about a lot within Indian country.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's one of those things that you said, how do we start to have adoption of Indian culture, of Indian thoughts and influence within this country? And that is by reinstating the nations and bringing them to the table and, providing for their needs, first of all, and lifting them back up and putting them in a position where they can influence what's going on. And that's one of those issues that I think is going to have a big impact on that. Of course, social media and shows like what we're doing, people like yourself going out there and getting educated and doing the work, the hard work that needs to be done within the legislative processes and whatnot. And then, bringing everybody to the table. We just have to, like I said, we got to bring women to the table. We've got to bring our nations back to being whole and put them on the table too, before some of these things that we have can be given to the rest of the country or the world, for that matter. When especially when it comes to climate change and what's going on out there, it's the fact of the matter is that all of our struggles, the struggles to retain and keep and to protect the land, are at our core beliefs. And so the whole world has a lot to learn from us, and we need to be at the table. And hopefully that's another process that's going to start to take place, as indigenous nations are going to be brought to the table when it comes to how does this issue get solved? How does this global warming issue get solved? And we've got the answers. We've got the answers. We've had the answers for thousands and thousands of years. All you had to do is listen to one of our songs and listen to some of our dances and watch some of our ceremonies and see how we have respect and reverence for the water, the sun, the earth, the air. Because if you have a spiritual reverence for those things, you're definitely not going to harm them. You're definitely not going to exploit them. You're definitely not going to destroy them or seek to destroy them or think that they should end at any time, because all our job is to breathe and make sure that things don't end during our time. That's it. That's all we're supposed to be here to do. All the other stuff is just busy work, like fleas on a dog.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people starting to talk about, she on that. But a lot of people starting to talk about things like indigenous-led conservation instead of some of these other conservation movements, which probably were good, well-intentioned, but they didn't actually flow with nature in the way that they thought. And it was interesting. I heard I think she was a Sami woman who shared that if you restored some of the original place names, you would get hints of how that land originally was used and taken care of and viewed. And that just the name and the significance of the name itself could teach you something about how you can respect that particular area.
Which is exactly, we had a whole show on this. That was 2 shows ago, right? Our friend who they renamed the lake, Shannon?
Yes, Carly.
Carly. So Carly came on, and her family actually renamed the lake that they lived on back to its indigenous name.
So beautiful.
And that was part of their argument was, basically, hey, look, there's a reason why it's named this, and it's important, and it's a lesson for all of you, not just us as a vanity project to rename it, but this means something, and you need to learn that lesson, not just the name itself, not the fact that you have a trouble saying it or whatever, but what is behind that name? Why is it named that? And what can it how can it benefit you versus what you've done to it, And that's always the case with almost everything that's indigenous. They've stolen it, and they broke it, or they didn't use it right. And now they've got to give it back so that we can fix it and show them how to use it and care for it. That's kind of how I feel about everything. It's like, okay, give it back. Yeah. Children, you screwed it up. Let's show you how to take care of it. Let's see if we can fix it. Just calm down. Watch this.
Language is so important, right? Yeah. So now that you're in New York, Victoria, did you watch the Macy's Thanksgiving parade?
No, I did not. I've watched it in years past, but I did hear about the acknowledgement and the Wampanoag.
Yeah, so there was this great Wampanoag prayer and ceremony, and in the middle of it, the woman said, we are the stewards. We're still here because that's our job. We are the stewards of this land, and it was so powerful in the middle of the Macy's Day capitalism parade. Yeah. With people lip singing bad music, bad pop music, to have that right in the middle and right during this pandemic. That's right. I felt a little bit of hope that happened. I know that the Oneida has had a float that has gone by, but no one ever had this kind of attention at the freaking Macy's capitalism parade. So, and such a powerful thing. So sorry you missed that. But everyone go to YouTube. I'm sure you're going to be able to find that little snippet of that important moment that, all of us talking about climate change, Roy, what you were talking about climate change, and that things are going to happen and things are going to start to change. I don't believe that's true. I believe it's going to change if we actually do something. So all of us, whether it's us who can pray well, us who can meditate well, us who can listen well and do something with what we hear, but we all have to take part in it. And Victoria, that's why you're such a meaningful relationship to me, because every job you've taken, whether it's as an attorney or whatever, you're not just sitting around shuffling papers, but you're actually trying to problem solve and help create solutions for people. So that's why I'm so glad to have you on here.
Thank you.
We all have to be responsible and accountable to making this change happen.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited because I think there are many options out there. Oh, I'm losing my voice, you guys. Sorry. There are many options out there, and there's the federal recognition process that was brought up, but it's been really fascinating that there's a lot of natives who are raising their own funds to get back land and working toward rematriating land and working in other ways to reclaim a lot, and saying sometimes the federal government has not done us well. And there are so many violations of treaties, and there are some, maybe there's some things we're doing that we can just do without them. And I'm kind of getting excited about that and about some of those possibilities. So,
yeah.
But thank you for that really kind thing that you just said.
It is exciting times, though. It is exciting times, even though it's very, very hard times. And me personally, I went through some very hard times this year, but I've been excited about the future this year more so than any other year, because it feels like the final collapse of the status quo of the things that have been going on. And even though they're very powerful right now and they're screaming and they're flailing and it's causing a lot of damage right now, it's the death throes and you can see it. It's like it's drowning and we're watching it drown. And that's what gives me hope. And that's what excites me about what's happening now. And I'm glad that I'm at the pinnacle or peak of my mental state at this point with my maturity, versus, being a youngster that has to go out and do the work right now. So which I do, I envy them, because, when I was young and full of fire and had all that, I didn't have a whole lot of, we didn't have these platforms. We didn't even have cell phones back then. I mean, now, I mean, literally, I mean, the youth today can organize through a cell phone app and have thousands of people in the streets, within minutes. And they can communicate and they can maneuver and they can share information at breakneck speeds. And, I mean, legislation information is all at your fingertips. All of this stuff now, it just makes it, everything is moving in lightning speed now for us, and for us to carry the message and to bring us home right now. So it's exciting times. I'm excited about things.
Yeah.
Faux show.
So in the climate change work, and I won't go there, but in the climate change work, how involved did you get? There's a question from Lance there. Let me pull it up here. He asked, can you use the Freedom of Religion Act for global warming? Are there any laws or any legal activities that you've been involved in that has been trying to work against climate change or trafficking or anything that have been helpful? I think most people see it in a litigation context than policy change, but
I think it's really hard here in the US too, because I see a lot of very creative thinking happening more internationally. But in the US, the courts are so, don't bring in anything international here. And there's a lot of international Indigenous human rights frameworks and some really creative things coming about that way in some of those areas. When I was working in the Arctic regions, hearing some of the thought processes and some of the things that you get through the UN that people are bringing up and playing with, some really interesting ideas. Here in the US, I think it's really tricky. I mean, we barely are able to keep people off sites like Mauna Kea, and everyone saw Standing Rock, and we see all sorts of things happening on areas that are considered sacred lands, which are, if you start messing with ecosystems, you are going to impact the balance of climate, and we are struggling. I think it's really a creative idea. Could we use the Freedom of Religion Act? But we're still, we can't even get the United States courts to fully agree to support the Indian Child Welfare Act, which has been a federal law since 1978. You know what I mean? Like, we're still constantly going back and fighting the most basic things. So I think if someone has a great idea on that, go for it. I'm nervous to get anything that ends up being appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, and a lot of our federal circuit courts are terrifying right now. So I'm a little concerned about some of those, and I'm not the expert on that. Like, there are some brilliant legal scholars out there and attorneys who could probably speak to that better than I can by far. My most exciting moments were when I was talking to different Indigenous peoples from different places in the world and hearing some of their approaches and trying to figure out how to translate it and bring it back home. And learning from them and gaining new perspectives from the things that they've held on to too. But I think it's a constant battle and it's a constant struggle. And I won't lie at saying I got a little overwhelmed and frustrated with trying to work in the system sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that's a cop-out, super cop-out answer. Sorry about that. But it's just really, I threw my hands up in the air on a regular basis because
But that's what they're hoping for. That's what they're
I mean,
hoping for.
yeah, it is. And once again, we're working in a system that wasn't designed for us to succeed.
No,
Right.
no.
Our
Exactly.
treaties, I mean, has there ever been a treaty fully completely honored that was ever written? I mean, so
It
it's
was designed for us to disappear is what it was designed for.
exactly. And so we have a win here and there, and we need to fight for those wins, and we need to celebrate them when we have them. But I think we also have to recognize the weakness of the system. And that's why I get excited now watching the people saying, we're just going to do this ourselves over here. We're not going to worry about you anymore because I mean, look at what happened in the beginning of COVID. Where was the funds for the tribes? How long did it take to just get things released? And how hard did people have to fight just to get that released? I think there are some real lessons and some serious conversations we need to have. So that was a really long tangent away from the question. And I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Shannon, on that, but I think it's a clever idea.
Well, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, or the act that came after that, I'm losing my acronyms right now, but the courts basically said that it's unenforceable.
I know.
It's a nice policy statement.
Yeah.
But didn't have any teeth.
Yeah.
So probably not a good choice for global warming and climate change, but and I'm not sure what is, and that's why I think a lot of people look at lawyers that we deal with like these litigation issues, like we go to court, and that's how we make change happen, and that is one opportunity,
right?
But as we know, we don't win in court. We rarely win in court. Who wins is when we can partner with maybe a group of non-Indians who have a good case, and it actually helps our rights too. And those kind of cases win, but we're not very successful.
So you're saying we're going to have to continue to you do sneaky shit in order to get shit done.
You call it sneaky shit. I mean, that's one way.
I know. That's the only way anything's ever been done. Everything's ever been done.
It's called legal strategy, my friend.
Yeah, I call it sneaky lawyer shit. Is what it is.
Change. It's about storytelling. It's about changing hearts and minds, right? It's about making sure that American Indian history is not American Indian history taught in school, but about contemporary Native peoples that are being taught in our public schools, so that everyone knows that we have a viable right to be stewards of this land, and we have values that should be appreciated. So there's so many other things that we can do, and as lawyers, you have a different, they kind of. Did you go through that thing when you went to law school, Victoria, and afterwards where you kind of had a detox? Or you had to...
I think I still am.
I was going to say, don't you guys always have to do that, like on the regular?
Because the purpose of what I tell people, the purpose of law school is to turn you into an asshole. You have to think like an asshole and be an asshole to be successful.
I fit in really well there, to say.
I'm not going to get myself in any more trouble.
Yeah, Roy, this is a good time to just...
I'm going to let you go ahead and self-deprecate or whatever you call that, and you go ahead.
But it's true. You relearn how to think, how to talk, how to write, how to interact on certain things. And I would say, not necessarily to be an asshole, maybe to be very concise and to the point, and to hone in on the core of something. And that can be twisted in a lot of ugly ways. And it can lead to some really ugly behaviors if you're not grounded. I actually think in some ways I was lucky to be a single mom at 41 in law school, because the life experience I brought with me may have changed some of the ways, and I don't know what it would have been like for me in my 20s and where I was at that point.
Yeah. With power comes great responsibility.
With old age comes wisdom, right? Now that I'm a grandma, I throw that grandma card on the table all the time. I'm a grandma now. Like that. Only in Indian country does that mean
Oh,
much,
yeah.
Anything, yeah.
but there's some truth to it. When we start talking about approaches to things or how we view things, I think about it from grandchildren perspective now. I listen, I get it. I loved my kids and but I was always chasing them around and keeping up with all the lessons and all the homework. With the grandchildren, I fully get the whole thing that kids are our elders. I listen to what they say. I'm like, whoa, did you just hear that perspective on that? Did somebody else hear how deep that child was? And it's a whole new way of walking in the world, and I get it now in a way that I never did before. And man, maybe we should put a bunch of kids together and let them tell us how to fix the climate and fix the earth and what to do with some of these politicians, because I bet you that they could come up with some really incredible solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if lawyers got all the answers. I don't
We
know.
have a lot of answers.
You guys do good. Like Lance just put something up great here. So we just need to be Indian. Better call Sal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to be native anyway. Haven't we noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, love it. Love it.
Oh,
Yeah,
here we go. That's great.
those,
The
new
little
Little
elders.
elders. Oh, I love that so much. And
Little
that's
elders.
it. Really, I could probably live my life on the wisdom I get from my little grandkids and my little nieces and nephews.
Mhm. Mhm. I do the same with my 14-year-old. Oh, don't tell him that. I don't think he's
Oh,
listening anymore. But yeah, even my 14-year-old. And I'm so grateful
yeah,
for that wisdom, because as adults, we get a little full of ourselves sometimes.
yeah,
It's
Not
nice
me.
to have our kids around us to bring that back, and that's why they're so valuable.
they're
Um,
amazing.
to our cultures, and it burns me like nothing when folks are trying to fight against Indian Child Welfare Act,
Yeah.
and this libertarian, what are they, the gold fingers,
Or trying to silence children.
gold waters,
Period.
Goldfinger is better.
gold fingers, the Goldwater
Yeah,
group or whatever they are, and they're fighting against the Indian Child Welfare Act, and they're saying it's not the best way. It's not the gold standard for Indian children, and that Indian tribes look at their children as resources, and that's,
they have
they've
twisted it.
twisted it into something that's uh, completely offensive to
Right.
anyone who's ever been in Indian country,
Yep.
and knows what that means. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent
Oh
now.
no, we could go on that one for a while. I have some strong feelings, but I think there's a couple of things there. Number one, we talk about our children as our elders, our future, the continuation of our culture. And yet many of the Western legal principles, the children don't have certain rights. They don't have certain, if you want to talk about treating children like property, as the parents are fighting over this and that, and they talk about a child feeling that way when they're caught in a system like that. And the other thing I would just say is, man, there's such a thing. As soon as someone like Goldwater gets involved, all of a sudden everyone wants to start claiming equal protection violations and ICWA. And the next thing you know, I mean, if you trace it back, those people don't care about our kids. You know what they care about? They want to get rid of our ability to prevent them from getting access to our resources, to our lands, to everything.
Yep.
And you get ICWA declared a violation of the Equal Protection Act, and what else is coming next? And what does that actually mean? They don't care about our children.
Right.
They care about wanting to get us out of their way.
Yep,
We are in their way. They want to continue mining and exploiting and doing whatever it is that they can do. And it's an easy way in. Sneak in through something that you can play in the press to make us look mean. Oh, look at these nasty tribes coming and stealing these children away from these white people who love them. And they play the PR game. And that, I think it goes back to a point that was made earlier. A lot of our battles are lost before we ever get to court, and they're lost in the press. And that's why we have to have our documentaries and our plays and our songs and our shows like this, where we are showing people who we really are and having the real conversations. If we don't ever do that, we keep losing before we ever get to the courtroom.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That whole situation is just another way to make us disappear.
That's right.
Another way. If they can't stop it at the source, they're going to remove them from it, so that
that's right.
And so we
part of it.
did this streaming event earlier today about the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864. That act that violently killed and skinned and stabbed and scalped children and women who are indigenous, who were staying on their lands, was so that that colonel or whoever he was could build his railroad.
Yep.
So it was to gain the land that they were on.
Yep.
It's no different. What they're doing in court against ICWA is no different than what they've done with their swords and their guns in the past.
Yep.
And that's why law is, it really is, it can be such a dangerous practice, and why we have to understand it as Native people, but we can't be sucked in by its, I'm going to go work for a law firm. I'm going to be there. Okay, we won't go there. Anyway.
But you do have to fight them. You do have to fight them on their battlefield, and it's their battlefield that they've created. And that's why you guys have done what you've done. It's not selling out. It's, hey, we got to fight them on their battlefield.
I think everyone has their own road of how we bridge and how we work. And when we find the right one, we can resonate in it, we can move in it, and the doors open, and we can do some good. And it's just not looking at somebody else's path and saying, why are you on that path? It's recognizing and trusting people that they're going to find their piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, exactly.
And this happened to be ours, right, Shannon?
Yeah, exactly. And there are people on a daily basis. Every morning they get up and they take care of their relations or other people's relations. Right. Every single day. Make sure the kids get fed, go to school, that they're taken care of, that they're clean. Those people, like my grandma, like our grandparents, are still out there doing the most important work, I think.
Yep.
And very grateful for them. And I think we need to get more grandmas and aunties on our show.
Yeah, no,
we need to remember, because
the women have outnumbered the men on the show. Like, I have to admit, we've had more women on the show than men.
I'm going to go back and count that.
Count them. It's
I think it goes back to that perspective that there's not a greater way to contribute. And I do think that we need to really work on that. Mm-hmm. The outside world has made us feel like we should be judged by letters and whatever. And really, what really counts is, are we making our contribution in the way that resonates for us, in the way that fits for us, in the path that has opened up for us. And everyone who does is doing an invaluable service. And I genuinely do believe that. And it's not just, saying it to try to appease anyone. And we need to, people just need to be proud of the path that they're on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We all need each other in our different roles, and be responsible and accountable. Our tribal leaders, they need to be responsible and accountable to their people. And we need to be accountable and responsible for one another.
Yeah.
Even if all you can do is say a prayer today, that's what we need. I'm really grateful for you being here, Victoria. I know we've missed some eras of your life and stories, and so I'm going to stop here and let's all take a breath and see if we've missed something, if there's something that has been on your mind that you wanted to talk about.
I don't think so. I think that point that we were just hitting is, if I were going to say anything, sometimes we think We judge ourselves by the standards of the outside.
Mm.
It's too late, or you come from this background, what are you thinking, or this doesn't look particularly exciting or cool or get you out in the spotlight. And we start judging ourselves from those perspectives. And maybe that's easy for me to say, but I haven't lived my life as a lawyer. I haven't lived my life doing things that the outside world would give me applause for. This has just been a recent part of my life. And I really hope that every single one of us start viewing ourselves as, what was I born to do and where am I on that path, and stop comparing ourselves to things and start re-indigenizing our own perspective of ourselves. I'm here, I'm being. For a period of time, my whole being was I was a mom. And that was absolutely spectacular and amazing. And everything that I did to try to be that was amazing. And I think we're going to be a lot happier, and we're going to get rid of some of the complications that we make for ourselves and our community if we stop looking out there for the answer, and we stop comparing ourselves to each other, and we stop letting the outside world define how we relate to each other. And I don't want it to sound like I'm being all Pollyanna or anything. It's just that in hindsight, I wish I would have valued myself more when I was just the mom of 3 running around little kids, not having finished my education, not having done any of those things. I didn't value myself as much then, because I really was trying to say, well, I haven't accomplished anything. My God, if I would have died that day, look what I would have accomplished. I brought these, I did the best that I could to live as a good human. So during all this craziness, if all you were able to do every day, like you said, is to say a prayer or just get out of bed one day when you didn't feel like doing it, or just listen to someone talk when they were having a day, focus on that, and just give yourself a pat on the back, because this has been a challenging time. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me. I put on makeup for y'all today. I'm proud of me. I'm proud of me for still being able to laugh. And anyway, I hope that is something that somebody needed to hear.
Absolutely. Yes, we all need to hear it and remember.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all that.
Yeah.
You are a good lawyer.
I think not such a bad Sunday night with another attorney, was it, Roy?
Roy, you survived.
I did. I survived.
Survived
It was
another
very, very pleasant. Very pleasant.
Well, cool. Well, I feel like we're kind of running down. We're kind of slowing down, and what do you think? Should we call it an evening?
I think so. I think that she's given us she's given us her all just now. And said, guys, this is my closing statement. Let me go.
Well, I enjoyed you too. It's not the company. I promise.
It was awesome. Thank you, Victoria, for coming and joining us. We appreciate you and all that you've said and all the hard work that you're doing, and the fact that you basically did all this in your second part of your life, or not even how do you say that?
I'm old. It's cool. I'm old. I did it when I was old.
I mean, come on, 41 going to school. I mean, anyway, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm putting my foot in my mouth right now.
That was very lovely. Thank you.
But
and yes.
Bless his heart, right? One of those things. But no, for doing the work now, and going and having a whole life before that, and then saying, you know what, there's really something I got to do, and then getting to it and doing it, and that's what I like. That can-do spirit, like Colonel Sanders did at 60, right?
There you go.
You never heard the story of Colonel Sanders, Shannon?
We don't want to talk about Colonel Sanders. Come on.
He started selling chicken when he was 60.
We don't want to hear about Colonel Sanders.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. Anyway, Thank you, Victoria. We really appreciate you, and we have fun laughing too.
Miigwech. Thank you, Roy and Shannon.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yakoki. Thank you, Victoria. We love you, and hopefully we can bring you on again sometime soon.
Sounds good.
And maybe even be in the same room together.
I can't wait.
One of these days, we're going to get to do that shit again. One of these days.
Yes.
All right, Victoria, thank you so much. We're going to pull you, and we'll see you next time. And stay warm up there in the Great White North.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey,
it's another episode. What episode was this? We're on episode 33.
33.
33 episodes. We've got 249 subscribers on our YouTube. We need more.
We need more. So like, comment, subscribe, and get the viewership up and get this information out to more and more people. You can share it. All you got to do is pull the link down, put it in your Facebook, put it in your Twitters, put it wherever you can, and get some more people in here. Come join us.
Put it in your TikTok.
Put it in your TikTok. Make TikToks.
By the way,
I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
So who's our guest? Do you know who our guest is next week, Roy?
It's not a lawyer.
It is. It's not a lawyer. You're right.
I was right. I was right.
You are right. You are right. But do you know who it is?
It's an Indian person.
Oh my God.
Why you put me on the spot like that?
Yes, it's a native person. You should know.
I should know?
Yes, you should know.
Oh, how?
Her name starts with an R.
Oh, is it our TikTok Raquel?
It's Kel's a funny girl.
She is hilarious.
Raquel Quinones. Yes, is going to be with us. She was with us last week. If you were watching, so
we're going to get to one-on-one with Raquel.
Yes, one-on-one with Raquel. So
Very
please
cool.
Make it for that. We're really going to be grateful. She's from Spirit Lake, Dakota, and she'll be spending some time with us. And Roy hopefully will be calm.
Yes, I will.
But
I have lots of questions for her, and I can't wait to dig into it and help support her and her channel and all that. So, yeah. So bring everybody you can, because it's going to be great. She is hilarious. You're going to love it.
Yes. Yes.
Gosh, and Victoria's sitting there listening to me talk about Raquel, and her introduction was, "Oh, we got another lawyer coming on."
Yeah, good job there, Roy. Good job.
But Victoria was awesome. She was awesome.
Victoria's really wonderful. That's why I wanted her to come on. So,
all right, who we brought by?
We are brought to you by the Association on American Indian Affairs, the oldest nonprofit serving Indian country, now on its 98th year. We just finished our 98th membership meeting and event last week, and we got a lot going on coming up on 2021. So keep watching. Follow us on social media, YouTube, blah, 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 blah. Follow
us. Yes. Come hang out with us next Sunday. Yes, all right, everybody. We appreciate you all. Thanks, chat room. You guys are awesome, as always. We'll see you guys all next week on Red Hoop Talk.
Red Hoop Talk.